Hello, everyone, and welcome to another community conversation here on Facebook Live and WHBG Channel 20. I'm Mayor Eric Pappenfuss, and it's good to have you with us again. We've got a great topic for discussion today. We're going to talk about faith in the age of coronavirus and how many of our faith communities are coping and adapting during this pandemic. We have 9 faith leaders from throughout Harrisburg and the region that are going to be joining us and sharing their thoughts with us. And we're also going to have an update from Harrisburg School Superintendent Chris Selmer in just a couple of minutes. So thank you for joining us, and we're glad that you're here. I wanted to start with some reflections on the last week and a few general comments. Might as well begin with the protesters that are currently congregating on the Capitol steps. I just came from the Capitol area neighborhood where things were going smoothly. I spoke to the police commissioner, and the crowds have been relatively light today, just a few hundred people here for the Reopen PA protests. We took the added steps this time to try and avoid unnecessary disruptions into our residential neighborhoods. I know that many people, including myself, felt traumatized by the way in which people sort of invaded the local streets, honking horns for hours and hours, and traffic was gridlocked. We decided to block off 2nd Street and 3rd Street, as well as cross streets like North Street and Green Street and Susquehanna Street. And we published a map which basically had the protesters going from 2nd Street to Forster Street to 3rd Street, maybe up to 6th Street and around. And I think the flow has worked very well today, and there's been minimal disruptions, and I'll get another update afterwards. Again, we're trying to strike a balance between the right of the protesters to freely air their grievances, but also our rights as city residents not to have our lives unduly impacted by those protests. Another note, some of you may have seen this week that the county commissioners backed down off of a threat to take Dauphin County from the red stage to the yellow stage, which would allow more businesses to reopen than are currently permitted under Governor Wolf's stay-at-home order. I was pleased they backed down. I urged them to, and I think the whole situation was unfortunate, given that it created confusion, I think, on the part of the public. I've stated, and City Council is in agreement, that we are very comfortable following the Department of Health's guidelines, and we will continue to look for them for a scientifically based approach for when it is appropriate to reopen. The latest statistics for Dauphin County included 40 deaths due to coronavirus and over 890 confirmed cases. And that has held fairly steady. We are weeks away, at the very least, from reopening. We have not begun to see those cases really come down like they have in other counties. And I think it's reasonable to expect that certain counties, like maybe Perry County or York County even, will move to yellow before Dauphin County. So we'll continue to keep you updated. We're going to continue to work together and be in this together. But I would not expect Dauphin County or Harrisburg to move into the yellow stage anytime soon. This past week, there was some news in that mayors from Pennsylvania's 15 largest cities, including myself, got together and penned a joint letter to our federal congressional delegation, all of the members of Congress, including our senators, Casey and Toomey, urging Congress to consider direct appropriations for cities in the next financial relief bill for coronavirus. It is important that cities receive this type of funding aid, which they have not received yet, in part because of the declining revenues we're expecting and already beginning to see in things such as parking taxes, declining mercantile business privileges taxes, property taxes, and others. And this would help us fill the gap in our budget, make it through this year without having to do any types of excessive cuts, which would further complicate the financial recovery, not only for the city and the region. While we're talking about taxes, you will be getting a flyer in your trash bill this coming month, which reminds everyone that property taxes are allowed all the way through the end of this year without penalty. Normally there would be a penalty phase, and we have removed that. So we're trying to give people more time to pay their taxes and to plan out their bills as we ease back into a form of recovery. I also wanted to make another pitch and plea for people to consider voting by mail for the June 2nd general primary. I know that's fast approaching, and we have had to change a number of polling places in Harrisburg and make other accommodations, but we're really encouraging people to apply for a ballot to vote by mail. You can do that online. The application deadline for voting by mail is 5/26, so just a few days away. So I hope people will request their ballots. I also hope people, as we've been urging, will respond to the 2020 census by going to 2020census.gov. And just a reminder that you can call and you can do your census by phone if you don't have access to the internet or you think that would just be easier. I'm going to give you two phone numbers now, one for English speaking and one for Spanish. For English, if you want to take the census, call 844-330-2020. And for Spanish, you can call 844-468-2020. Again, it's important that everyone is counted, and that is one of the keys to the funding formulas, not only for local and municipal governments, but also for school districts and other authorities. This past week, you may have seen that Impact Harrisburg and the city, in a joint project, began check distribution to over 300 businesses, small businesses, neighborhood businesses scattered throughout the city of Harrisburg. I have to say I had a chance to read some of the narrative impact statements that businesses sent in as to why they hope to receive grant funding to keep them afloat during this difficult time. They were passionate, they were moving, and there was an overwhelming display of appreciation and optimism that occurred. That check distribution went on throughout the week. We also submitted to City Council a proposal for a round two. A second round of funding for small businesses, this time using federal community development block grant funds in the amount of $500,000. So if you were not one of the businesses that received a grant in this round, or even if you were but could use additional resources, we hope there will be a second round coming, and I will have more information on that once City Council hopefully approves that program. Speaking of City Council and approvals, this past week, everyone should be aware that a wonderful, wonderful affordable housing development project was approved for Allison Hill, which will hopefully begin construction later this year and is going to result in the construction of 50 new homes as well as a community center. It's an over $10 million project, and it's located really in the heart of Allison Hill near 15th and Walnut. It is a cornerstone project by TLC Construction, which also operates the Hub, the Harrisburg Uptown building, and a work-based training program. They're committed to utilizing local labor and giving back to the community, and this is a fabulous project. I want to thank Tarek Castile and his entire team for bringing it to the city, and we look forward to partnering as that moves forward. So new affordable housing, individual townhomes, and a multi-unit complex all being proposed for Central Allison Hill for later this year. And then finally, in terms of announcements, I am pleased to say that the Harrisburg Planning Commission has completed its initial drafting of the comprehensive plan. This is a plan that was delayed for several years as the Harrisburg Planning Commission decided to take another look at the draft that was submitted by the original consultant. There were a series of additional meetings and some changes made, and they have now completed that full draft. And they're going to be planning 4 virtual meetings via Zoom coming up, the first being on Wednesday, May 27th, and then also on Wednesday evenings, June 3rd, June 10th, and June 19th, all at 6:30, and all to discuss the comp plan basically in 4 parts, a couple chapters a night, going through the whole thing. Upon the completion of that at the end of June, it will be submitted to City Council, and City Council will then have its own its own review process and its own conversation about the comp plan. But we hope to have that completed, ratified by the end of the summer. And again, a comprehensive plan helps sort of guide development in the city by presenting a unified vision, a unified document. And it represents input from hundreds of public meetings and from a lot of outreach that was done to the community. So I hope people will, it is not too late to comment. It's not too late to have your voices be heard. I hope people will participate as we move forward with those meetings. And I'll have more on that next week as well. So with those announcements, we are going to turn next to Harrisburg School Superintendent Christopher Selmer, and we wanted to talk a little bit this morning about the budget. I know many read in the Patriot News this past week that there will not be a tax increase this year for Harrisburg, and I think that was welcome news, very, very welcome news in this difficult time. That said, we understand that there are serious deficits, looming deficits, and there are going to be a lot of difficult choices that need to be made. So, Mr. Selmer, if you could update us on that budget meeting and let us know a little bit more about the sort of financial thinking for the district moving forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you for, again, having me on the show. As you read, we have a preliminary budget that we are getting ready to present on Monday night. We had a budget workshop on May 11th. We shared during that budget workshop that pre-COVID, we would have delivered a structurally balanced budget to the Harrisburg School District with no tax increase, no utilization of fund balance as was done in prior years. Then, unfortunately, the pandemic hit and things have changed. And what has changed in our budget projections is really on the revenue side. And you mentioned it in your comments, Mayor, and things you're looking at from a city perspective. We have concerns on loss of revenue. We had to revise our projection for state funding to flat fund that. And we're hoping it stays at least flat funded for the 2021 school year. But we had to make revisions to our other revenue projections like earned income tax, mercantile tax, our investment earnings, et cetera. So that's what created what is a little over a $4 million deficit for the 2021 school year. But there's some glimmers of hope for the 2021 school year. One of them being is the CARES Act is distributing money to school districts. We in Harrisburg are slated for anywhere between $4.5 and $4.7 million of additional one-time funding that would help support what school may or may not look like to start next school year, as well as other needs to safely operate our school system once we can come online. There's also appears to be flexibility with those dollars too that would help offset some of that shortfall as we're moving towards a one-to-one technology platform in the school district. And as well, we were also working on a debt restructuring prior to COVID that we believe will realize anywhere from $2.5 to $4.5 million of relief next year for the school district. That money was initially, and still we're hoping to put that towards infrastructure needs, as it is only one-time funding. But given the uniqueness of this situation and our approach to keeping the educational structure and the gains we're starting to make in place, we really want to keep the structure of the school district whole, at least through the 2021 school year. Certainly, if we're in the same type of conversation with declined revenues, et cetera, this time next year, it could be a much different conversation. But that's where we're at. So I would say we're optimistic, Mayor. We're hopeful. We are proposing no tax increase at this point. It's not, I wouldn't say it's 100% off the table, but we're going to do everything we can to ensure that we don't have to add a tax increase back into the budget, given what's happening and how it's impacting the community at large.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Yes, and a couple comments. One, just for the public's knowledge, the school district does its budget in the middle of the year, as opposed to the city, which will do its budget at the end of the year, which is why these issues are coming up now. Also, a lot of the taxes that you pay, whether it's earned income tax, as you reference, or even the amusement tax, those are taxes which are split between the city and the school district. So they're experiencing a deficit even this early in the year. Projecting it forward is something which the city is also going to have to deal with in the longer term. And the superintendent referenced funding from the CARES Act, which is available for school districts, and that is exactly the type of funding that the mayors united on throughout Pennsylvania to ask in the new federal stimulus package if they would include a similar type of direct appropriation that would allow us to also stave off the possibility of tax increases or more drastic cuts and help us make it through this crisis. So thank you for those financial updates. And let's turn to a positive topic, which is, and we've talked a lot about the device distribution that's been going on in the district, but I understand there's good news for fifth graders.
Yes, Mayor. This coming week on Wednesday and Thursday, we will be announcing another device distribution. That will be for our fifth graders, in addition to any other students that have not had the opportunity to pick up a device. We're going to be doing that Wednesday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, between the hours of 1 and 4. So there'll be information forthcoming early next week to our families. So again, we're excited. Again, as I mentioned in prior shows, we received a grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, over $260,000. That has really helped to expedite our ability to provide additional technology to our students. So we're focusing on grade 5, and then we'll be focusing on grades K to 4. And I just want to make one other comment. Is some may ask, well, there's 3 weeks left in the school year. Why are you still distributing devices? And there's 2 reasons why we're doing that. One is we are working on hopefully some academic enrichment program that we could do virtually over the summer for our students. So we believe the connectivity through those devices will be critical. And the second point is we want to be ready day 1 of the school year, no matter what that may look like, given the current pandemic. There will be some technology in the mix, no matter what the return to school plan looks like. So we want to ensure that our students have devices in their hands ready for day 1 of learning for the start of the school year. So that's the reasoning why we're still continuing to distribute, even though technically the school year 1920 is coming to a close in a few weeks. But that is our reasoning and our strategy of why we're continuing to issue devices to our students.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense, and I assume the contacts and connections with everyone will continue right through the summer as we move into the fall. Is there anything else you'd like to convey at this time?
No, I believe, again, thank you for having me, Mayor, and we'll continue to provide updates as we move through the coming weeks and into the summer. And, again, just want to stress, I know I've had questions come to me about, well, what's the start of next school year going to look like? And we just don't know at this point. We're working on planning. We're working on different scenarios. But as you mentioned at the start of the show, we're following the guidance from the governor. And that certainly will lead to some of the decision making we may or may not be able to make as we look at the beginning of the school year. So while we're planning, it's really at a 50,000-foot level right now, not knowing some of the decisions and how this pandemic will continue to impact the community as we move into the summer. So I just wanted to make that last statement. Again, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for those updates, and I look forward after the show to returning to our Channel 20 programming for the school district. It has been going well, and it's always interesting to watch. So thank you. We're going to turn now to our topic of the day, which is faith in the age of coronavirus. How are our communities of faith adapting and surviving? Indeed, while there have been many challenges, there have also been opportunities to, I think, strengthen one's faith in the midst of those challenges. We have a number of guests, so we're just going to have a few questions for each, and then maybe we'll have some questions from the public for the group. I wanted to start with Reverend Nathaniel Gadsden, who has joined us, and he happens to be the co-chair of the Mayor's Interfaith Council. as well as a real fixture in the Harrisburg community. In fact, I can't turn on my Facebook feed without seeing you, and that's a really good thing. Let me start with just a very specific question, which is I know you're also a chaplain with UPMC Pinnacle, and so maybe we could start with, very specifically, how has the pandemic changed the way you've provided ministry in that particular job?
Yeah, well, we have, of course, not been able to allow loved ones to come in to see their loved ones who are in the hospital, and that's, a tremendous loss. Of course, people are using the cell phones and video, apparatus to stay in tune with the families. But there's nothing like being connected to your family. So one of the roles that the chaplain plays, of course, is to go in and to be a present help for the Lord, to be there and to, listen, pray with. All of that. And sometimes because of the pandemic, we had to simply make phone calls because of the nature of the illness and how, dangerous it is. And we have so many wonderful nurses and doctors and others who are putting themselves on the front lines and in harm's reach to do the work. And it's necessary work. And we as chaplains do the same. But when possible, we try to use, the video calls or just a straight out audio call in order to stay in touch. And so that's been different. I will tell you that we've had some people who were, transitioning into, the afterlife, and we've had to use video conferencing through the nurses in order to talk to the families and to give them comfort. Also, in our congregations, we've had all of our sermons now online and doing it through Facebook Live, and we've had Bible study through Facebook Live, and the opportunity for that, of course, is that we've discovered new people have discovered us and we've discovered them. And so our outreach has been greater than just the four walls that we occupy on a Sunday or Wednesday evening or throughout the week. And so there's certainly been a downsides, and we want to be connected. But on the other hand, we've learned a new technology, and it's opened up a lot of relationships that we may not have otherwise had. And so that's sort of the good side of it all.
Yes, that's exciting. It is true that technology and things like Facebook Live have made it possible to communicate in effective ways, even amidst this. And so, I guess the question is, how do you see your ministry changing moving forward once we make it through this pandemic? Will you continue to use technology? And what are your general thoughts on how on lessons learned?
Yeah, technology is here to stay, I think, for everybody. I think we've all learned that, we have got to have greater reach. And I think we've already known that, but now we've been forced to confront that. And there is some upside, of course, to technology. And of course, there's this upside to working together. We've been forced to not only look at our own congregations, but outside to make sure that our neighbors are true to our neighbors and that they're being, served and attention is being paid to them. I think the pandemic has forced all of us to rethink who we are and how we are, in the kingdom of God and what we're called to do. We've had time to reflect and to also, reconnect with people in many different ways. And so that's really a good thing. The one thing we cannot do is just go back. And first of all, let me say that I saw an article recently, and I think it was on Facebook, where it talked about how there's so many new churches that are now abandoning the buildings and finding, spiritual spaces, whether that be in a person's home or in a bar, in a restaurant, whatever, and that those spiritual spaces are thriving, and people are rethinking, what it means to be, a person of faith and to serve. And so that's always good. So I think from this point on, we are forever changed. Hopefully, we will not go back to our same way of thinking and just our same way of doing and being kind of, stuck in that mode where we will always be thinking outside the box of how can we be more innovative and more connective to one another and more purposeful in our faith walk. And that's, and also the interfaith piece has always been very important. And now I think we've been able to confront that even more. We're not just Christians or Muslims or Hindu, but we are people of faith, and we must all learn how to work together and see ourselves truly as brothers and sisters. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you, Reverend Gadsden. I think that's a very important message. I'm going to turn now to our second guest, who is Rabbi Eric Citron from Bethel Temple. And Rabbi, let me start with a general question to you, which is how has the pandemic affected your congregation and your outreach?
The pandemic has really transformed us into a virtual congregation. The office is closed on the Sabbath and during the week, almost every day. We try to connect to members of the congregation with programming, educational, just an opportunity to talk and certainly to pray together. And so the virtual nature of things, I agree with Reverend Gadsden that I think it's here to stay. Before this, we were live streaming services basically on Saturday morning. I now imagine in the future we're going to be live streaming more services and maybe even continuing to Zoom services where we actually have the chance to feel people's presence because they're not anonymous on a live stream who we can't see, but people whose faces we can see. And it's all about seeing people's faces. It's all about letting people know that the challenge of isolation can be bridged at least somewhat through looking at someone's face and knowing we care about each other, we love each other, we're trying to be together as best as we can. God gave us the gift of intelligence. We've been able to develop these technologies, and thank God, because this would be unimaginably worse if each of us were not able to connect to each other via the technology.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's such a change, and everyone is working hard to make those connections. How has the pandemic really affected your congregation's ability to engage others in the community, even outside of your own congregation?
So there are congregations that are building relationships with each other. So we have programs that we co-sponsor with our sister conservative congregation, Chizuk Emunah. I know that Chizuk Emunah and Kesher Israel, the Orthodox congregation, are going to have a program. I think it's this Sunday. They're going to have an educational program for our upcoming Shavuot holiday, which is in Christian terminology, Pentecost, 50 days since the Passover. So the JCC is keeping everyone involved. The Jewish Federation is keeping everyone involved and together. Today, there's going to be a wonderful opportunity to show our love and support for the people who are isolated in the Jewish home and the residence up on Linglestown Road. We're going to have a parade of cars for about half an hour. And we expect literally hundreds of people to be driving by, honking and wishing everyone well and knowing we can't go in, they can't come out, but we want to show our support. We continue to do Meals on Wheels. We continue to do special things in the community that keep people together, and especially for the most isolated. I know that rabbis are calling their congregants, checking in with different people. Board members from each of the congregations are calling members of each congregation. We're having our congregational annual meeting via Zoom on Sunday morning, which is totally new. But it will allow more people to participate, and that's great.
That is great. And I guess as a final question, it's a serious question, but maybe you could talk about it. But does your faith tradition, does Judaism offer, in your opinion, a sort of unique theological perspective on how to deal with this type of pandemic?
I don't know if it's unique, but one of our fundamental principles is to save a human life, you go to extraordinary means. in Hebrew, Pikuach Nefesh Doche et HaShabbat, even the restrictions of Sabbath, which tell us not to use electricity and not to use certain technologies and not to do certain things, to save a life, and that is understood broadly, is a responsibility that we have. Secondly, there is a teaching that we have from 2,000 years ago based on the book of Genesis, that to save a single life is to save an entire world. And to put a life in threatening position, or to murder someone, to kill somebody, to be responsible for that is like destroying an entire world. So the idea that our members of our community know that to save a single life, we have to make extraordinary sacrifices to save a life, that's very important. And that's a fundamental principle that everyone within the Jewish community lives under.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And we're going to turn now to Behzad Zandieh, who is the elected member of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'i in Harrisburg. And let me start with the same question I've been beginning with, which is basically, how has the pandemic affected your community and your abilities to minister to your congregants?
Good morning. Thank you for having me also with you. And it's great to see my friends' faces again. What happened with the Baha'i faith is that on March 10th, it was decided not to hold any gathering in person, and everything went via Zoom. So even our holy day celebration of the New Year on March 20th was done with Zoom, and all other holy days, worship service, classes, just everything went on. And we are so fortunate and thankful that nobody in our community contracted the virus, and we hope everyone else also is safe and are keeping also safe at the same time. And so it's interesting that one of the tenet or the principle of the Baha'i faith is harmony of science and religion. And we saw that that was a true example of it, that how religion and science, they can harmonize with each other, and nothing was interrupted and nothing was left alone, and people are more closely relating to each other than maybe before, because we don't have the distance to drive anymore. So it's very, very interesting. The only thing we had to deal with was everyone had to learn how to operate the Zoom technology, which is not that difficult, but that was new skill that we all have learned. So this is another positive way if you want to look into positive thing in something negative. And also gave us opportunities to serve more our communities and also our neighbors with delivering food or medicine. We made a lot of face masks and gave it to those who did not have or could not find. So it has been a tremendously positive effect on us, and those that they had been ill or older generations, now they couldn't drive anywhere to come to a session or to a worship service. Now they don't have to do that. So we have more communication with them too. So it has been blessing at the same time, and we hope as the days go by, we will have more relief from this pandemic, and fewer and fewer people will be affected by contracting it.
Yes, thank you for that positive message of hope and opportunity in the midst of everything that's going on. Can we talk about that a little bit more? Are there you mentioned the making of face masks? Are there ways in which your community is offering assistance to others during this crisis?
Right. We put a word out that if anybody needs, they cannot go out or they shouldn't go out, we deliver things to them. And pushing with medicine and food has been a top priority. And another one was very important, that we found that at least on several days or evening a week, we can have devotional time together. and pray not only for ourselves, but the whole humanity, because we all have been affected by it one way or another. So these are the ramifications of it that made us to become more connected with our neighbors, with ourselves, even though we do not see each other in a very close distance, but seeing each other just like now is quite a treat to see each other that we were not able to do before.
Thank you. And can you tell our viewers who's watching a little bit about how your faith has been impacted by this crisis, and what the teachings of your faith tradition help you, and how they help you to adapt?
Yes, very good question. One thing that we found out was that this harmony of the science and religion is very, very powerful. And whatever that we have come up with the ways to in our daily lives or community life is all because of the technologies that have been invented or was discovered ever since. And that's one thing that we use very much. And then another thing that everyone is very, very concerned is this, that how soon it will be over. And if it's over, do we have this kind of a network or closeness with each other? So the decision was that we will continue to meet like this until the time that is completely safe. Everything else is all the way to the month of September has been postponed, and all they will be observed or celebrated via Zoom.
Well, thank you very much. We're gonna turn now to our next guest, who is Reverend Roque Santiago of the First Bilingual Christian Church. And Reverend, let me begin with you with the general question of how is your church coping and adapting during this time of pandemic?
Well, good afternoon. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in this Facebook Live. And well, our church is been here for 50 years. We are one of the older Hispanic church, which is a bilingual church now. And since the pandemic, we are. Like I heard the previous guests, we have to learn different things, different technology, and one of the hardest thing for us is that we now have to deal with the congregation from our home, from our offices, and since we cannot get together, but we are coping very good. I mean, with we try to be in the compliance with the state mandate, and staying at home as much as we can, and keep social distance. And it is, for us, it's very, very hard, because we want to be together. We are a congregation that, and I know many congregations, we depend on each other, and it's not the same when we have to be in different places to talk about what we want to talk. We'd rather be together and hugging each other. We can do now, but we are coping, and we're learning things, and we try to be the best, trying to do the best we can in under the circumstances. And we also are, what we are doing is we're connecting with the parishioners, with the church. We are connecting via Zoom, via conference call. We have all our all our groups of we have about 9 different ministry in our church, and we all active working with the people that they are in charge on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, and they are doing it through the same through media, and we're trying to do the best in under the circumstances. And but one of the things that we have learned, like I have learned to use the technology that I never used before, so that's a positive. So we are doing good.
Good to hear. Let me ask you a question about language and communication, because I know that's something that we've grappled with as a city, which is, a large part of this crisis has been making sure that people had access to information and communicating basic health guidelines and other things. And I wonder how your perspective on the dissemination of that to non-English speakers has worked, or any lessons that we can draw from your experience dealing specifically with a bilingual congregation.
Yes. Well, what we one good thing about all this is that the state, and also we have received a lot of information both in Spanish and in English, and so what we're trying to do is the people that we're trying to put on social media the guidance, for instance, the guidance what we need to do, even washing the hands, keeping the distance. We are trying to put that in on social media, in both languages, and thank God for what the state and the city are doing, putting this information in both in the same language, and in both language. So therefore we can it's easy for us to do it. If not, if we find something that is only in English, so what we do is we translate that, and also we give it to the people that don't understand the English language. We give it to them through social media, through other means.
Great, thank you. And then I guess as a final question, does your church have any upcoming events or services or things that you'd like to communicate here to the larger audience?
Yes, we are. like I said, we are 50 years this year. Is in August the 8th. We having a big celebration, and we've been we've been working on it for the last 2 years. My wife and a group have been trying to do everything for the last 2 years, and now we are waiting. We have a big question mark. We sent all the invitation. We did everything we have to do for the celebration, which is in August 8th, and so we are waiting to see what will happen. We hope that by that time we are in the green light, but we are. Yes, that's one of the biggest events that we have coming for our church. I mean, we've been here in the city for 50 years, since 1970, working with the, first we started working with the Hispanics people, and then after a couple of years, we became a bilingual Christian church. But yeah, this is one of the biggest events that we have through for this year, and other events that we had, but they are minor, so we can work around them. But this 50 years, the one that we are praying and please, those who are here, just help us pray so we could have that big event, and that by that time we will be on a green light.
Well, congratulations certainly on 50 years. It's an amazing accomplishment, and thank you for sharing that information with us. Let's turn next to Adila Hassan, who is the Engage Central PA Board Chair. And Adila, my question for you is, how have mosques within Harrisburg and Central PA been affected by the pandemic, and how have they been responding to the crisis?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for connecting all the faith leaders of our area, Mr. Mayor. I hope that all of you are doing well, and may God's peace and blessing be with all of you. These are such unusual times when COVID-19 has upended the way we go about our lives as Muslims, especially in the month of Ramadan. But I'm sure we all find ourselves in the exact same predicament. So for me, it will be interesting to learn from all the experiences of this panel. So coming back to your question, Mr. Mayor, the Muslim organization have been proactive when it came to closing down our institutions. All our mosques had closed operations starting the second half of March. Mr. Mayor, mosques are not just places of worship. They are places where the community gathers to celebrate the various stages of life. They are usually busy throughout the day with the 5 daily prayers and adhan. Many classes are operated of these places, which also function as Islamic schools. But community at large has understood that for everyone to be safe and for mosques to thrive again, we need to keep our distance. So all mosque activities has been slowly shifted online. We are now seeing absolutely no foot traffic. Everything physical is closed. Events are rescheduled indefinitely. Ceremonies are not occurring. Schools have been closed. Classes have moved online. Friday sermons have moved online. The downfall is the mosques are not seeing the same revenue or donation, you can say, that used to be there in the pre-COVID era, but they continue to struggle. So they continue to struggle financially because a lot of folks within the community has lost their job. And this has had a direct impact on the loss of revenue from both the individuals and the mosque perspective. But despite these losses, the community has decided to keep all the doors shuttered and closed so that we can get over these difficult times faster.
Yes, thank you for that. Can you tell us and help explain to those watching at home maybe how the pandemic has affected certain of your religious practices, maybe especially the month of Ramadan?
Well, Mr. Mayor, the activities during the month of Ramadan, especially the daily fasting from dawn to sunset, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Ramadan teaches us Muslims to practice self-discipline, self-control, and empathy for those of us who are less fortunate. Ramadan is a time for act of generosity and compulsory charity. We call it a zakat. COVID-19 has totally ravaged this year's Ramadan. See, the best part of Ramadan is at iftar, the smells of delicious preparation when We break fast with our friends and families, hugging and sharing the Ramadan joy, the extra nightly prayers that we all go to as a community. Uh, the lockdown has been extremely difficult for Muslims around the world, uh, where many are opting for video conferencing to replace this in-person meals and prayers. But as we all know, Zoom is just not cutting it. But we all have the hope in our hearts that it will all be coming back to normal in due course of time.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight. And I guess as a final question, can you talk a little bit more about how Muslims in general throughout Central PA are reaching out to help and provide services to the greater community in the midst of this pandemic?
Mr. Mayor. Well, as always, in our tough time, we take our cue from our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, who said, he is not a believer whose stomach is filled while the neighbors of his side goes hungry. So we have started several initiatives with leaders from across the community. We are doing three basic things, providing food, providing health services, and help navigate the government programs. We have opened food bank or food pantry, you can say. These are currently being operated out of Beshore, which is operated weekly, and Eshore, which is operated bi-weekly. In addition to the physical food pantry, we are also providing grocery delivery services for our seniors and for those who do not have means to travel. The community is also offering a drive-through Ramadan iftar. Apart from drive-through meals, which is separate, we are also providing drive-through meals, which is separate from iftar. Through these meals and food banks purchases, we are supporting our local businesses in their time of need. Secondly, the medical professionals within the community are continuing to provide health and counseling services in these difficult times. Our dental and medical programs, which were already operating throughout the year, are now providing their services through telemedicine. And in addition to these, especially for the lockdown, we are also introduce a helpline for people who need mental health counseling. Finally, the statewide Muslim organization like CARE and Engage have been holding multiple webinars to inform people about the various programs that have been introduced by the government, because most of these programs are difficult to navigate for a lot of folks within the community. All these services are free of charge and are being provided by the Muslim of Central PA who have volunteered in large numbers to support their neighbors and their communities.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that report, and thank you for all that is being done. We're going to turn now to Reverend Sandra Strauss with the PA Council of Churches. And Reverend Strauss, you're in sort of a unique position in that you're running a statewide network of people of faith. And maybe you could talk a little bit how the pandemic has changed your outreach.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Papenfus. I'm so happy to be here and very happy to see a number of my friends here joining us as well. Yes, my ministry is very different from what other people are doing with local congregations. We do advocacy ministry across Pennsylvania, both at the national and state levels. And what's happened over the last while is that I believe that people are feeling a much greater commitment to doing this work at this time. What's happened with the coronavirus is that it really has laid bare the failings of our systems here in this country. So people are seeing now with greater unemployment, loss of health insurance, with loss of income, of course, the inability to be able to pay rents and buy food and all of those things, that we have a responsibility at this point to step up and really work to ensure that the systems that are there are providing what is needed so that people do not end up falling completely through the cracks during this time. We have learned new and better ways of engaging with folks. We certainly have spent a lot of time on Zoom, just like everyone else has. And I think the good news for us is that we are actually reaching a lot more people through our use of Zoom. There are people who could not get to meetings otherwise who are now able to join us. We have expanded to move into doing things like online vigils, prayer services, because that is something that we know people really need right now. We've been doing online vigils for the Berks Detention Center around criminal justice reform. We are in the process of putting one together on gun violence right now. And we also just launched a book discussion series. This is something we haven't done before, and this is focusing on the book White Fragility. So we have a number of folks who have joined. Actually, our first session was last night, and it will go on for 4 weeks. People seem to be responding very well to that. And so this is something that we are looking to do more in the future. And I think we will transition over time to doing much more of our work this way, even though we miss a lot of the face-to-face meetings. This is helping us to realize how many more people we can engage in more constructive ways. The other thing is that we are reminded through all of this that even though we are, I won't say haranguing, but pushing our elected officials to do more at this time, we also realize that a lot of them are facing the same struggles that we are, and that we need to use this opportunity to offer prayers on behalf of our elected leaders as well, that they act compassionately and wisely through this process.
Yes, thank you for those updates, and especially the book discussion. I think more people are reading and looking for outlets for talking about what they're reading. So that's good to hear. You talked a lot about faith-based advocacy efforts, and I know that's a real focus of what you do. Do you see this pandemic as an opportunity, for sort of increasing that type of advocacy?
I do. I think as I mentioned, we now see a lot of the failings in the system, but what we also see now that has been exposed and many more people are able to see that we can begin to envision a future that is actually better, that more and more people are going to be willing to join to say, we can do a lot better than what we have done. We don't need to leave so many people behind. It is, as a Christian, we would say that we believe in doing unto others as we would wish for others to do unto us, and loving our neighbors. And if loving our neighbors means that we treat them with respect and we ensure that they have all the things that they can do to survive and thrive. So to the extent that we now recognize that really recognize the flaws in our system and can begin to say that there are ways that we can handle things much better, so that we do have people not dying for lack of insurance, starving for lack of access to food. Fortunately, right now, they can't be thrown out of their homes because the governor has issued an order to ban evictions and foreclosures during this time. But it's laid bare now for all to see. And we are looking to develop that vision for what can be for a better future post-COVID-19, and will shape our advocacy efforts much more around that.
Thank you for that answer. Let's talk finally here about May 7th, which was the National Day of Prayer. And you and your organization have really been a point person in annual interfaith service observances of this day. Can you tell us what we were able to do this year for the National Day of Prayer, and maybe advice to others that are trying to plan observances during this time of pandemic?
Well, we did what most congregations are doing, and we went to Zoom. We invited only those who were actually participants in the service, but then we streamed to Facebook Live so that we could invite people from across the state and actually across the country, if they wish, to join in celebrating the National Day of Prayer with us on the 7th. We had representatives from as many faith communities in central Pennsylvania as we could gather. I believe we had probably 7 or 8 different traditions there. People offered prayers. We weren't able to do things like dance, which we did in the past, or have groups of singers, but we had individuals who played instruments and were singing. And what we found was that we at least quadrupled, and probably before this is all over, we'll have done much more in terms of the number of people we reached around the state. I can tell you our Facebook page, actually, the followers of our Facebook page jumped by about 100 just because of that service, which was a sort of a nice side effect. But I think in the future, even when we are able to gather together again, one of the things we will do is make sure that we are doing a stream to Facebook Live or to YouTube Live, so that others can join us. And this will give us the opportunity to bring people in from different parts of the state as well, as we learn to do this better.
Thank you. I think that's a lesson for all of us, and appreciate your comments. We're going to turn next to Pastor Chris Sledge of the Journey Church here in Harrisburg. And Pastor Sledge, let's start with the general question again. How is your ministry and the mission of your church been impacted by COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor, for putting this conversation and all of the work that you're doing in our city. Like everyone else, we were able to pivot online worship actually quite easily. We're a younger church, we're a little bit more nimble. And so it was just a quick decision on a Friday or even a Saturday, and then we were kind of online, and we've been doing that for 8 or so weeks. We decided early on, I kind of sat down and said, what's not going to change in this season? And so we decided that like our connection as a church, like community, and our connection as a staff isn't going to change, but actually we want to continue to foster community with other people. We wanted to continue to, for us, recognize that God is still in control and giving us a sense of peace and hope in the midst of the season. We decided like our mission of why we exist isn't going to change. We still want to love people in our community, and we still want to connect people to Jesus. And so those were just some things early on that we decided that we weren't going to change. And so it's been fun, actually. I don't know about everyone else. I've had a blast in this season. Even though it's been hard and uncomfortable, I've had fun. Figuring out ways to help our church like be neighborly, like no need to like go across the country or world, but like how can you just like care for the people who live next door to you? And that's been really cool to see people do that. We've served with First Church of the Brethren on Hummel Street with food distribution every Friday morning. We've handed out household supplies and food, called people. I'm a millennial, so talking on the phone isn't something that's natural to me, but I've had a blast talking to church folks. I feel more connected right now to my church folks than maybe I did before COVID. And so we've been able to, I think, make this transition really well.
Well, your optimism is contagious and really inspiring. You talked about being a sort of a younger church. Can you maybe speak to in a little more detail about how you have been able to make those connections and keep those connections going in a way that might give some lessons to others that are watching this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple of things that we're doing, like outside of calling people, we've moved kind of all of our small groups and those kind of community moments online kind of via Zoom as well. We've kind of experimented with Google Classroom a little bit. Maybe if someone's super busy and they can't just kind of hop on at a designated time, how can they still kind of learn and grow in their faith as well? One of our team members, our discipleship pastor, creates weekly videos for our kids. So our youngest kids and then our elementary age kids, and she uses her own kids and it creates just kind of fun animated videos for them. We're looking at doing like a VBS at home this summer of how do we help kind of families when school ends, but they're still at home and they're still social distancing. How can we create kind of a faith activities with adventures and videos kind of for our families and kids who are at home, to kind of give parents and grandparents and kids something to do this summer. And I think finally, we're also doing like a Sunday night conversation series that we call Expert Opinion. So we're asking local leaders, influential pastors and counselors just to engage and kind of help us learn in this season instead of maybe a talking head like me, but how can we can learn from others. And so we've had some great local people a part of that and looking forward to the future of that conversation series as well.
Great. And as you know, I'm looking forward to being a part of that as we move forward. Let's end on a sort of philosophical or theological note because your optimism is so clear and so vibrant. So how has your faith led you or inspired you to be able to remain positive and forward-looking amidst this crisis?
I think that's a wonderful question. I would say first, just from my own faith tradition, just the language that we have in Scripture where it says, "Don't be anxious about anything, and God of peace will be with you." And so I think early on, I just had to come to this realization, this mental realization that it's going to be chaotic and it's going to be a long, however long this lasts, it's going to be long. And so early on, I just kind of cling to that scripture to not be anxious about anything, but to recognize that God is with us. But I also think I've been inspired by people in season. People have stepped up, even these faith leaders that I've learned from in this conversation. People have stepped up, and I just want to see the best in humanity. Things like those who are at our Capitol today probably drive me a little crazy. But I want to have a kind of a more maybe holistic sense of like people are struggling in this season. Whether they're looking to go back to work and open up Pennsylvania, or they're sick and they're struggling financially, or parents are navigating being teachers and taking care of their homes. And so I've just had a sense of like, how can we, maybe me, people I interact with, how can we remain positive and strong and have a sense of peace within ourselves and see the best in other people? Which is, I think, part of what I believe our God does, is see the best in people and wants to give us a sense of peace and love in this season.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. And we're going to turn next to Mohammed Lone, the Assistant Public Affairs Secretary for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Central PA. Let's start with 2020. We talked. I mean, this is a special year for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the USA. Could you tell us why that is?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Mayor Papenfuse, for having such an amazing forum together and allowing us to listen to such amazing people, faith leaders. 2020 is our centenary year celebration. In 1920 was the first Muslim missionary, Dr. Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, who actually came, in fact, to Philadelphia. And from there on, we grew. And so this year is a very special year for us. And adding on top of that, what our dear sister Adila had mentioned, that this is a month of Ramadan. So our spiritual barometer right now is just through the roof. And so this year we have been involved in a lot of pre-COVID-19, involved in a lot of community programs, whether it had to do with providing food and clothing for the homeless, providing, doing blood drives, even doing planting trees in neighborhoods. So we were involved in doing a lot of that, and then all of a sudden COVID-19 came, and it just so happened Ramadan also started. So we are now involved in a lot of other community events as well, which we can talk about. But to answer your question, it's a 100th year mark for Ahmadi Muslim community in the United States for 2020.
Yeah, congratulations on that important milestone. Now, I know you have a vibrant community presence here right in the heart of Harrisburg. So can you talk a little bit about how the health pandemic has really affected your ability to minister not only to your congregants, but to the larger community?
Right, and so it's like our sister said earlier, that a mosque is a place of gathering for Muslims, and according to Islamic tradition, Muslims are supposed to have congregational prayers 5 times a day, and so that's just a basic of what mosques do. Along with, on top of that, we have gatherings and meetings of different auxiliaries are meeting, programs, community programs are going on, sports going on. So what ended up happening was that obviously all of that had to stop, like it did for everyone else. And it wasn't as difficult for us, quite frankly. And the reason is that we, the Ahmadi Muslim community, we're in a very unique position of getting our guidance directly from our Khalifa, our Caliph, His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad. And he laid down, he gave us guidance, very direct and very clear guidance, not just to the United States community, Ahmadi Muslim community, but to the entire world Ahmadi Muslim community. And it was a very clear-cut guidance. And quite frankly, this guidance came even before we were talking about lowering the curve and bringing it down. All of this talk hasn't come out yet when we got the guidance of us first and foremost, following all directions from the government and the public health authorities pertaining to COVID-19. And in terms of social distancing, His Holiness has instructed members to avoid all unnecessary travel as part of instructions given by the government, and to maintain proper social distancing. And then congregational prayers that were being done at the mosque regularly, like I mentioned 5 times a day, are now moved to people's homes. We don't believe that anything can hurt us when it comes to anything can hurt Ramadan, or anything can hurt our prayers, or anything can hurt our belief, because all of this is in our hearts. So we basically turned our homes into mosques now, according to the guidance by our Khalifa. The members, he also mentioned that the members should offer daily prayers, and the Friday weekly prayers should be offered at home as well, which are mandatory to attend for according to the traditions of Islam. And all members must practice good hygienes on top of that. So we should practice good hygienes at all times to minimize the risk of the virus, and also, regular hand washing, sanitizers when water is not available. So these are all direct guidance from our Caliph coming down to us and His Holiness. And then he also mentioned that all members should also do whatever they can to remain well. For example, he has advised that we maintain a healthy diet and rest as much as possible in order to, to maintain a resilient immune system. So in terms of mental wellness, His Holiness also mentioned that he's advised the members to use their time at home productively, to keep, routine your routines properly, keep themselves intellectually stimulated by reading and learning, and to spend quality time with your families. Take advantage of this time. On one hand, we were complaining we don't have enough time for our families. Now, guess what? God gave us this time. So we have time with our families now. So let's take advantage of that. And at the last point that His Holiness had guided the entire Ahmadi Muslim community around the world is that he instructed us to serve our country and the vulnerable members of our society according to the rules and regulations of the government. And in doing that, in central Pennsylvania, we have supported our community members by providing them with help with their groceries, with their rent. We've provided preventative education and services. Our ladies auxiliaries, in fact, they are leading the way. They're leading the entire charge, and they have sewed 200 masks that have gone out to healthcare workers and other organizations, from what I understand, to police staff as well, department as well, that are in the field. So we have been very active in this whole COVID-19 with the capacity that we're given to be active. And we also are open to any help that is needed from us within our capacity that we can provide. This would be a welcomed opportunity for us to serve humanity, and that we did prior to this, we're doing now, and God willing, we'll continue to do after this whole pandemic is over.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that guidance with us. I think it's excellent advice, and it really transcends any one faith community, and I think is an opportunity to bring all of us together if we follow it. And I agree with you. One of the great positives that has come out of this has been more time with immediate family. And I think that's something that we can all build on by strengthening those family units. I think we can strengthen our society in a larger way. Let me end with a question, because I understand you have a virtual event that is coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I actually took the liberty in the chat box to put my email and our mosque's phone number there as well. It's better just to use my email. So I wanted to extend an invite from our president to all the members that are present on this forum for tomorrow, 6 to 7. It's virtual. So please attend. Copy my email from the chat and send me a message. Let me know if you're interested to attend. I'll send you the Zoom invite for that. It's a virtual iftar gathering that we have. It's an open forum. We do have some speakers, but it's an open forum. So if you'd like to say something, a few words tomorrow, or whatever it may be, it may even be questions directly asking about Islam. And if you're have any curiosity, your friends and family that you know, your network that you think may enjoy joining tomorrow, please, they're more than welcome. So please get my email down, wn.yrk@ahmadiyya.us, and we would love to see you tomorrow at our virtual gathering.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And Moment, I believe we did lose Pastor Coleman. Is that correct? Let me just say that Pastor Coleman is the chair of the IMC, which represents well over 100 churches here within the city of Harrisburg. He has been a great source of inspiration and discussion, and we've had many conversations recently. I know that one of Pastor Coleman's larger advocacy issues presently is how we can increase the availability of testing, specifically in Harrisburg. We are working together on an initiative with UPMC and elsewhere to try and do just that. So I'm sorry he had to leave before we got to him, but I just wanted to mention those things. And we've had a terrific discussion with an awful lot to think about and unpack. I'm going to turn it over to Momin to see if we have a few questions from some of the viewers.
All right. Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think we have time for just one question,
Okay.
But we can throw it out to the group, and whoever wants to jump in. can comment on this. So Suzanne expressed a concern about this stay at home and isolation and people struggling with mental health issues, things like depression and the potential for suicides because of those mental health issues. Are there any resources or programs that or other information that you can provide, those who are listening or watching regarding, some ways that they can get help?
Actually, there is a resource put out by the state. I can't tell you the exact web address at this point. I can look it up. This is, I believe, a call-in number.
Yeah, I believe it's called Reach Out. Reach Out PA, Your Mental Health Matters. There's information on, maybe it can be put on Facebook. There's information online about it. Yeah.
Yes. I have been sharing that with our networks as part of the information that the state's been providing.
And just to bring it more to the local level and to your religious communities, are there services that are focused towards mental health that you're offering your specific community or the community at large? Yes, Mr. Bezad.
This is one thing that it has been guidance came to us from our international institution that the families are being very much encouraged that on a daily basis, put the time aside for the family devotion time. Because if the atmosphere of the home is spiritual, then we will have much better way of communicating with each other. We won't get on each other's nerves because everybody's at home. They're not going anywhere and they get into arguments and all. There are reports that people are even becoming abusive and so on. But by having devotional time with your family members, at least on a daily basis, if not more, then your home atmosphere is spiritual. It helps your both mental and psychological state of mind also, and help your physical life too. So the ramification of it is tremendous, and that's one thing we have done, and we have seen quite a great result that everybody is safe and people have not become unkind to each other, but actually they're better than before.
Okay. And I believe I see that Ms. Hassan has raised her hand here, and I can unmute you. Go ahead.
As I said, we are providing the mental counseling, and the number is 717-382-8332. It is free counseling service or emotional support. I repeat the number, 717-382-8332.
If I could also, this is Nathaniel Gadsden, if I could jump in. Through Life Esteem, my wife, Patricia Gadsden, is working with a huge coalition to also provide services. And I could give you her number, but she's connected to psychologists and therapists and life coaches. And so anyhow, her number is 717-608-2302. And they have a wide-ranging group of people who are also providing free services and also services that persons pay for. But she'd be a great resource, Patricia Gadsden.
Yes, this is Eric Citron. I think Jewish Family Service has people who can connect with those who are dealing with depression and mental health issues. I think that's, I don't have the number, but it's on the Jewish Community Center website for Jewish Family Service, or JFS in HBG. And those people are wonderful counselors and can walk someone through the issues they're dealing with, or can connect them to someone else who might be able to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. We do have in our chat Pennsylvania Counseling Services, for those who are watching the replay, the number is 1-855-272-1653. So thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Momin. And I think it's a good note to end on, in the sense that I think one of the great things which has come out of this crisis has been a sense of togetherness and a sense of the importance of people realizing that we're stronger when we are united and we are standing side by side. And if anyone is experiencing a sense of depression or loneliness, know that you are not alone. And in fact, as you've heard today, there are communities of faith throughout Harrisburg that would love to provide a home for you and connections for you, and you can reach out to any of them. And we will put the information up on replays on YouTube and elsewhere. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us today. It was a great conversation. We went a little longer than usual, but I think the information that we shared was very, very valuable. Next week, as a preview, our thoughts are beginning to turn a little bit to the summer, and we're going to talk a little bit about summer programming in the city, as well as the virtual Arts Fest that is being planned and really has some great opportunities for people to get involved in, even though we can't really get out and work together at a traditional Arts Fest in Riverfront Park. There is a lot to do online, a lot to do for families and people of all ages, and we'll have more on that next week at our community conversation on Facebook Live. So thank you all for watching us. Again, I'm Mayor Eric Pappenfuss. We will see you next week on Community Conversations. Please stay safe and have a good week, everyone.